Welcome to More Than Words, a podcast about treating the whole child brought to you by the Reading and Language Learning Center. I'm your host, Tristen, and today I'm joined by licensed clinical psychologist and founder of the Sycamore School, Karyn Ewart, to discuss supporting independent learners. Hi, Karyn. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're very excited for you to be here. This is a fun topic, something that I think every parent wants to help their kid, become an independent learner, but especially kids who might have twice exceptionalities or, learning differences. So excited for you to be here.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So let's start with an introduction, Karyn. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, but I've worked in schools my whole career. And after being a therapist, clinical director, and even head of school at an area private school, I decided to create my own school. And so I'm the founder and head of school at the Sycamore School.
Awesome. And the Sycamore School is fabulous for the folks in the Northern Virginia area. Definitely check them out. And Karyn, how in the world would people do that?
So we're located in the Roslyn area of Arlington, and we have a website. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, all the social media sites. And you can call us or email us. And we have weekly tours, and our admissions people are ready to talk. So lots of ways to get in touch with us.
Perfect. And so for your website remind me what that is again.
Sure. It's the sycamoreschoolva.org.
Perfect. Okay. The Sycamore School VA.org. So I will put that in the show notes and people can find you guys that way.
Excellent.
Awesome. Well, let's hop right on in here. From your perspective, what does it actually mean to be an independent learner?
An independent learner is someone who is curious and knows how to access resources and evaluate resources in order to find out what they need to know. I think that I aspire to be a lifelong learner and to cultivate lifelong learners and to have that attitude of openness and curiosity. I think just is a good way to lead in general. Uh,
Yeah.
Being a learner also means understanding ourselves. We all have preferred ways of taking in information. And so
Right.
understanding ourselves and what we do well and what we might need help with so that we can advocate for what we need,
Right.
so that we don't have barriers to learning or
Right.
barriers to resources. I think all those things are important around being an independent learner.
Absolutely. And you hit on a really great point of everyone has their own way of learning. So kind of like finding that out is wise.
Absolutely.
So how early would you say you can start like fostering this independence? And also double question, how would you start doing that?
I think it's never too early. So as soon as babies and toddlers can respond to their parents, and even babies and toddlers, they want to do things independently. And
Yeah.
so I think it's encouraging that, and it's all about the scaffolding or how we support that learning. And so
Okay.
it is kids want to do for themselves and they want to feel competent. And so when our kids are very young, we do offer them a lot of help. But it's also creating space for them to make mistakes. And so it's
Yeah.
okay. Like when our child is learning to walk, they're going to fall down. The first time our students speak, in a public forum, they're going to be nervous. That's okay. So I think it's also parents being comfortable with being uncomfortable, in terms of sometimes taking the guardrails off and allowing their kids to be more independent and to make mistakes and to fail, because we want to create that resilience and we want students to experience a range of emotions so that they understand how to work through them. And I think that's one of the biggest things that current parents are struggling with right now is not doing for their kids.
Yeah.
So again, when kids are really young, and the key to this too is when kids are really young, they like doing chores. They love the idea,
Yeah.
oh, can I sweep the front porch? And they think it's fun versus you
Right.
ask, your teen to do that and you're going to get a very different response. So
Right.
the earlier you can do things with your child, clean the kitchen together, cook together, do gardening together. At a young age, fostering that idea of we're all a part of a family and we do
Yeah,
things together as a family. And so versus I have to do certain chores or I have to do certain things. And there's a whole other area of getting paid for stuff, which that's a very hot topic of whether you should pay for
sure.
or whatever, pay kids to do chores. But at the end of the day, as a family, you want everybody to feel like they're part of a family and that the things they're doing to be a part of the family. And so chores are a great way to start fostering independence with your child and doing with your child.
Yeah. That's cool, and I think that's very accessible to people. I feel like sometimes when you think about, like, fostering independence in learning, like, it feels like a whole separate thing, like, it has to be related to schoolwork or something of that nature, but I really appreciate that you said you can start as early as a kid can respond, and, like, responses don't always have to be verbal, so that's
Exactly.
so cool. And I feel like I've seen a lot of stuff on social media recently of kids doing like parents getting those, what are those, like big stools, like standing stools, so their kids can do like, chopping little things in the kitchen with them or like mixing muffins in a bowl and all of that kind of stuff, which I think is very precious. But I think is perfect for what you were just saying, right? Like allowing them to have that independence in like everyday things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And related to that, there are a couple things that I try to let parents know or kind of mantras. And one is not being afraid of unstructured time. That
Oh,
unstructured
yeah.
time really helps our students grow. And so I think that a lot of parents are in the trap of overscheduling and feel
Yeah.
like they have to be present with their child at every moment and scheduling every moment of the child's day. And more, we're seeing research that supports this, that kids really benefit from having unstructured time. It's okay for kids to be bored. It's okay for
Mhm.
kids to have to figure out what to do. You want that because that's actually what fosters creativity. And a couple of articles have come out recently about also within the community and how kids aren't really allowed to go to the park on their own or go to the store
Mhm.
on their own or go out with friends on their own. And we really, as parents, again, need to start taking the guardrails off. And as our kids grow, really giving them more opportunities to be independent and not be supervised all the time. And
Mhm.
I know with some parents that makes them feel really uncomfortable, but we have to gradually do this. Otherwise, your kid's going to be 18, going to college, and they're going to be doing everything for themselves. And so the more that we can foster that independence by not always supervising them, not always, frankly, making sure that they're doing things right. And so
Yeah.
let them make a mistake, let them deal with, having to manage a conflict or having to manage a situation independently. We have to start letting our kids do for themselves because there is a trend now that we're doing too much for our kids and that they're not getting that sense of independence and they're not getting that sense of having to correct things and having to work through a productive conflict.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that. And it's funny enough, we just had a conversation recently with someone on the podcast about structured time and like trying to figure out how to schedule your kids appropriately and not overschedule them, but not underschedule them. And so it was really interesting because we did talk about having supervised, like structured time. But then, of course, having that time where every parent's going to be different and their comfort levels will be different, but having that time where you allow them to be bored. Maybe it is in the house so that you know they're safe, whatever. But allow like I said, it's interesting that you said allowing them to have that time where they're bored so they can foster kind of like that creativity or allowing them to see that you trust them to go be with friends or do things on their own is also really interesting.
And I think that we need to think about what function is our supervision serving. So
Mm,
if it makes sense, you're supervising in the kitchen to teach your child, whether it's how to cut something correctly or how
right.
to work on a stove. But then eventually you want them to be able to do it on their own. And
Right.
so it is that pulling away from always having to be supervised. And at a certain point it is what what am I serving when
Yeah.
I'm continuing to supervise my kids on tasks that they can do independently? So why am
Hmm.
I still doing this? And what would happen if I let them do it on their own?
Right.
And so, and I think also a level of structure, and I think a lot of this has come up because we're learning more and more about kids who learn differently. We're learning more and more about, it's not one size fits all in terms of
Right.
parenting, in terms of learning. And so I think parents are almost hyper vigilant of what type of parent do I have to be, and what do I have to do, so that my child is successful. It is, though, really taking the lead from your child. Is your kid one that likes lots of activities, needs a lot of movement throughout the day? Is your child somebody who needs recovery time, who needs
Right.
alone time? And it's matching the activity level to their temperament. And so,
Yeah.
I had two in some ways very different kids. I had one child who loved to do things and lots of different things. So every time they did something, it's like, did you like it? Yeah. Do you want to do it again? Not really. And so they
Mm.
wanted to do lots of different things. And then I had another kid who was very much more cautious, liked to do things where they felt they were doing them well and do
Yeah.
one thing and then have a lot of downtime. And so it's honoring the difference of your child and seeing the benefit of, as adults, we have to manage stuff. Our kids, it's that it's that balance between seeing our kids with clear eyes and matching the activity level to the child, and also recognizing when our kid is overstimulated, when our child is having
Right.
enough, and saying, no, you don't want to go to bed, but this is the time to do it. And so
Right.
it's kids feel safe when they know what to expect. So as parents,
Right.
providing that structure, providing that scaffolding so that our kids have a routine, know what to expect, that helps them feel safe.
Right. Oh, this is so great. Again, like I said, we had Dr. Bennett on the podcast recently, and the both of these topics are just like so perfect. And I was saying to her too, I think this is a great time to have this because I feel like it's a point in the year where you like, especially now that people have like gotten into the groove of things, you're finding out like what your kid is enjoying, what they're not enjoying, where they need more structure, less structure. So this is like couldn't be more perfectly timed.
That's great.
Yeah. So when we met originally, you had mentioned this phrase, I do, we do, you do. Can you talk about that and how it works in practice for families?
Certainly. So it's one of my founding teacher, Michelle Branco. She often uses this, and so I'm stealing it from her. But I do think it's important. It's important technique at school and at home. And the
Yeah.
idea is when we're teaching a new skill, first we want to model it for
Right.
our child. So if we're teaching them to do the laundry or any cooking task or even driving, that first they're going to observe you. So you do it and they see you do it, and hopefully they're paying attention. But
Right.
regardless, the next time you're going to do it together.
Okay.
And then the next time they're going to do it independently, but you're there watching them. And
Okay.
so it's that gradual independence of they get to see what it looks like
Right.
when you do it together and then they do it on their own. And I think the rub with this is that so much of the time, especially during the week, we feel like we don't have enough time for stuff. So it's like, oh yeah,
Right.
it would be great if my kid helped me with dinner, but it's easier to do it myself. Or,
Sure.
yeah, it'd be great if they took out the trash, but it's their bedtime and I just need to do it. And so
Yeah.
it does require slowing down. And
Hmm.
you can pick your battles. You can pick what are the things that I really want them to learn how to do. But it is
Right.
taking the time to teach them how to do something correctly and then letting go. And so
Right.
um and it's letting go in a lot of ways of, you might teach your child how to do something, and then when they're doing it, they're not doing a great job of it. And so
Right.
sometimes you have to decide, do I let it go or do I say, yes, you did this part right, but this is the part you need to do differently. And so depending on the importance of the task or the level of oversight, because what will also happen, and don't think that the kids aren't intentional with this, like let's say you teach them how to wash the dishes and they do a really bad job of it. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's just easier to do it myself. Well, then
Right.
you have to go back, correct, show this is the part you did well, this is the part you need to do over again. And sticking with it and making sure they're doing it the way to the level that it's considered done. And
Yeah.
you can translate that again directly into school of at our school, students turn in a first draft of a paper, they get feedback. The idea of learning is around taking that feedback to improve your work. So you give them
Right.
feedback and then you ask them to turn in it again and then maybe again. And
Yeah.
that's the thing of giving kids feedback and then expecting them to improve what they're doing based on that feedback. And I think a lot of times kids wear us out and we
Yeah.
accept, oh yeah, they're kind of doing not the best job on that, or I do better doing myself. But we have to be able to delegate. We have to be able to, at some point, trust that they're going to do it. And so that might be giving them that feedback and then expecting more. Um,
Yeah.
but it takes time and it takes patience.
Right. So, I mean, when you give this, I think this is a great point because you are asking parents to give constructive criticism, which sometimes
Right,
isn't necessarily like an explicitly taught skill.
right.
So this is a great opportunity for kids to kind of like learn that. So how is it that a parent would balance that like stepping in to help versus leaning back, and like how often, how many times, like you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
of course it's not
It is.
prescriptive,
It's
but
not an exact science, and it's
yeah.
also the big X factor is the parent because
Yeah.
I may be a parent who's like, it's fine, or I may be a parent that has very specific expectations, and so that's
Right.
also for us to be aware of like what is good enough
Right.
and what makes sense of, I don't know, you're cleaning a bathroom. 10 different people might have 10 different criteria for what a clean bathroom looks like.
Oh yeah.
So, or a clean kitchen looks like, or a clean car looks like. And so it's also you're modeling what you think is good enough. And it is
Yeah.
an interesting dynamic if what you do yourself looks different on than what you think is good enough for the kid. So like let's say if I clean the
Mm.
car and I make sure I don't know that I've done the drying afterwards so that you don't get the streaks on
Yeah.
the windows. But for your kid, you're like, it doesn't matter. Why?
Hmm.
Why would you expect less? Why wouldn't you want them to do it the way you'd like it to be? You know what I mean? Or it
Right.
might be another one where maybe you recognize maybe I'm a little too uptight about that and relax. But the point is that kids notice, they know.
Yeah.
And so if you aren't holding them up to the same standard as yourself or something, the question would be why? And maybe
Right.
it's a good reason, but is the other just you're tired of bugging them? You're tired
Yeah.
of going back and saying, I really need you to do this and do this way. And so it's just being clear on why you're doing it and being honest with yourself about why you're
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you hit on that point. Like I do feel like kids notice those things. And so if
absolutely.
you don't have, like you said, if you don't have like a clear reason for why you wouldn't have the same standard for them, then evaluating that and kind of reassessing what you should be doing is a good place to start.
And the thing is too is expecting a reaction.
Mm,
So most kids aren't going to be like, "Oh, thank you for the feedback. Now I know the correct way to clean the dish." Like most of them
right.
are going to be like, oh my gosh, and can I just go do whatever? And I don't want to do this or whatever. So it's like
Right.
expect a reaction, expect rolling of the eyes or the I'm tired, I don't feel like doing this, or do I have to? Whatever. Yes, you're going to get that.
Yeah.
And you're going to get it at different levels with different kids. And some
Right.
kids, certain things they might enjoy doing, but you're going to get the pushback. That's okay.
Yeah.
Expect a reaction, but don't let it change your expectation because that's
Right.
these kids are so good at that. They're so good at pushing back
Yeah.
and then a lot of times the parents just give up. And then what you've taught the child is that if they push back, they're not going to have to do it.
You're right. Yeah. And you don't want that.
Exactly.
So you mentioned something, or when we were talking about the expectation for your kids versus you, right? Like you act a specific way and you would expect your kid to do the same. It brings me back to this when we originally met and you said how we act is more meaningful than what we say. So how is it that parents go about modeling independence? Like what does that look like in practice?
Sure. So it is, and I'm thinking of different like categories of things like
Sure.
technology and
Mm,
all different things I think it's also going back to where our child is developmentally. And
hmm.
so it is what is an appropriate expectation for this child developmentally. And
Right.
so we need to provide a lot of structure and a lot of direction for our kids when they're very young. And so
Right.
things like having set bedtimes, having a set place, maybe having a routine around where a child does their homework,
Mm,
checking in with them, helping them with daily living tasks. And then it's, how do we gradually reduce the structure with that understanding that the child is going to do for themselves. I mean, one of the big,
right.
it sounds so basic, but one of the big things is like brushing teeth, you know,
Mm,
and with little kids, we're really involved. And then you got a middle schooler and again, kids are so creative with how they get out of stuff. I mean, I remember
sure.
at one point, like literally taking the toothbrush and running the water so that my toothbrush got wet and not brushing.
Right.
And
Oh my
so
gosh.
and so again, and that probably some
Yeah.
people are like, oh, that's so gross. But you also have to think about what on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this? And so it's,
Right.
do I need to watch my kid do it to ensure that they do it? Do I have them natural consequence of they go around with stinky breath and
Right.
you know, they go to the dentist and they have a bunch of cavities and it's like that's unfortunate. So it is
Right.
that you have to weigh, but it's, if your kid's in middle school and you're brushing the teeth for them, that's a red flag. You know,
Right.
and so it's at a certain point you do have to let go of that, trust that they're doing what they say they're doing, and then there are
Right.
natural consequences. And that's the
Yeah.
other thing that parents are super uncomfortable with are
Yeah.
those natural consequences. Homework, a huge one. So
Yeah.
homework, I remember talking to elementary school parents and they're like, they do the homework with the kids and sometimes for the kids.
Oh gosh.
And yes, happens a lot.
Oh no.
And my question was, what do you think it accomplishes when you do it for the kids? I mean,
Right.
take a moment and really think about that. If you're doing for them, so it's, and because a lot of them are like, well, I want to make sure they get good grades, and
Right.
thinking, What does an A in the third grade mean?
Yeah.
What versus the message that you're giving your child is that they're not capable of doing it, so you're going to do it for them.
Right.
That, to me, is a really damaging message.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's say your kid does the work, they do their own work, they get a C. Okay,
Okay.
so why is that bad?
Right.
And so and this is something I feel really strongly about. Kids need to be doing their own work.
Absolutely.
And I understand some kids need startup help, some needs, but if your
Yeah.
kid's not able to do the work independently, then you reach out to the teacher and say, you know what, Johnny did this many problems on his own, and then he got stuck. So I'm sending it back to you half done, knowing he got stuck here. Could you help him? Like, let the
Absolutely.
teacher know because homework should be stuff that's sent home that kids can do independently. And if
Right.
it's not, then let the teacher know. But
Yeah.
to do it for them, that serves it actually serves a negative purpose in that
Right.
again, the kid feels like doesn't feel competent, and it's stressing you out. And I've heard so many parents of like, oh, I've had to learn how to do this. I've had to learn how, and I'm thinking, why?
Why?
Why are you doing that? You shouldn't be your child's teacher on
No.
academic stuff.
Right.
They should be getting that at school. And if they don't
Yeah.
understand it, they should be going back to their teacher and saying, I didn't get this. Can you please
Right.
explain it again?
Yeah.
And so again, it's that weaning off doing for them and helping that kid advocate for themselves to go to the teacher.
Right.
Yeah, I went home. I know we went over these problems. I did these didn't make sense to me. And
Right.
so then they get what they need directly from the teacher.
Right.
That's an important skill.
Yeah. I was gonna say the moment you said like, take this back to your teacher and say, I don't know what's happening here. Like, oh my gosh, what a great lesson in self-advocacy.
Absolutely.
It's so much more productive, right? Because
Right.
then you're allowing your child to identify their area of struggle and they're able to sit with the feeling of like, oh my gosh, this is really hard. I don't know what to do here and figure out how to problem solve from there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, how many science fairs have we parents gone to that really marveled at the artistic ability of people's parents?
absolutely.
I mean, really, like, and I'm thinking, "Why? Why
Why?
why? 'Cause you're not
Yeah.
kidding anybody."
No.
And this is just a story of me as a parent. I had 2 very different kids that, they have this whole anatomy of a cell project.
Oh,
And
yes.
and so my daughter made this cake and beautiful cake with icing and stuff and took it in as her model of what a cell is, parts of a cell.
Right.
And my son got a shoebox and
Okay.
he collected stuff throughout the house, batteries and different stuff, and he labeled everything, the different parts of the cell, and
Yeah.
it looked like a hot mess. And I looked at him and I said, "So you feel good about this?" He goes, "Yeah." And
Right.
I'm like, "You're okay with how it looks and everything?" He's like,
Right.
"I got the rubric, I got the checklist, I did everything on the checklist. It's ready." I'm like, "Okay." And so I let him turn it in and I'm thinking,
Right.
"Oh my gosh." I mean, at least the teacher knew for sure he did it himself.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Of
and he got an A on it. And
course.
again, I'm probably reinforcing the grades thing, but my point is he did follow the directions and do it. It looked ridiculous. It looked
Sure.
awful compared to these, beautiful models that other people
Right.
did. But he did the work himself. And
Yes.
that's the important part.
Right.
So
And he understood what the assignment was.
he
He
did,
understood all the things.
but he also didn't care what it looked
Right.
like. And so
Right.
he should have, if there was some sort of aesthetic component, then
Right.
again, then he learns from that.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Wow. I love that. What a great example of just like allowing your kids to be who they are, do what they do, and learn what they need to learn from the assignments, because that's kind of the whole point,
yes. Yes, it is.
right? So another thing we had talked about when we had originally met was parents admitting their own mistakes, right? So how important is it for adults to admit mistakes or talk through their own thought processes so that kids can kind of like hear that and understand things?
I think it can be a really powerful teaching tool, and it can be about our actions and also about our feelings and our thought process.
Mm,
So it also can be, yeah, I'm just feeling a little off today, or I'm feeling a little down. So I'm going to go take a walk and I might take a nap or something, or just modeling. We don't always feel 100%. And what do we do to
right.
take care of ourselves when we don't?
Right.
And then in terms of, uh, you know, I don't know, saying, "Oh, I ran through that stop sign and I shouldn't have," or apologizing, or, saying, "Wow, I was in a really bad mood and I was really short with you and I apologize."
Mm,
So it's owning our stuff. It's owning our
right.
stuff, showing kids that we're human, showing that we're not perfect, because I do think a lot of kids, they'll think, yeah, "Oh, my parent says all this, but are they really walking the walk?" And
Right.
again, technology is one of those things that I think is super powerful when parents are really limiting screen time and technology use, yet they're always on their electronics and aren't present. And
Right.
I'll say a couple things about that. One is that we don't need to be modeling everything I want our kids to do. In the sense is the rules can be different and should be different.
Sure.
We're an
Right.
adult. And so when the kid says, "Well, that's not fair, you get to do it." No, it may not be fair in your mind. That's okay. I mean,
Right.
again, it's okay if they're mad, if it's like, no, but the rules are different because you're a
Yeah.
child and I'm an adult. So the rules are different. I am going to stay up later. Or I am going to get to do this because I'm an adult.
Right.
So it's okay. Everything doesn't have to be the same.
Right.
But then two, I guess it goes back to what is the value, or what is it that we're wanting to model? And to me,
Right.
as parents, one of the most important things is to model being present. And so
Mm,
or same when you can't be, to say
right.
to a kid, "I would love to have this conversation with you. I have a 5 o'clock deadline. Once I hit that deadline, let's go out for ice cream and we'll talk about it, or let's go take a walk and
Right.
but I need to focus on this right now, and then I'm going to give you my full attention." But just be
Right.
honest with them, because there's so many times, and we've all done it, where we're listening with half an ear, or we're
Right.
annoyed, or we're just not there. And what we want to model is to try to be present when our kids need us, but to also set realistic things of sometimes we can't be, and just say, "I can't be, this is why. Let's set up a time to do that."
Right.
And but I just see it again and again. Parents struggle, think they are not enough, think they're not doing the right things. But are you modeling what's important to you? What values you are wanting your child to take on? Those are the things, the behavior, they notice that. Like if it's, I don't know, we don't scream or speak badly of other people, and then you're going around talking about people behind their back. Your kids see
Right.
that.
Right.
So it's it's are you, or if you misspeak or you say something, just say, that was really not nice of me and I shouldn't have said that.
Right.
Going back to own your stuff.
Right. Yeah. I really appreciate you saying like the portion of if you have, like a 5 p.m. deadline or something where you realize that you can't be fully present in the discussion that's happening, because I think that helps kids understand how to set boundaries or how
Right.
to have that conversation like with friends or with adults or whatever in the future where they have to say, oh, you know what? Like, this is something that's super important that I have to get done right now. And in 15 minutes, I will be able to give you my full attention. But that's such a great way of modeling that sometimes I don't think adults like have had as kids. They have to learn that as adults.
And another piece, and this has probably happened to almost every parent, it's 9 o'clock at night, and
Mm,
your kid comes to you and says, "Oh my gosh, I have a project tomorrow. Can we go to the store and get X, Y, and Z?" Or, "Oh, I told the class we were going to bring this in. Can we go out and get X, Y, and Z?" And
right,
again, you have to go back to what's the goal? And it
right,
might be that you decide in the moment, yes, I'll go out and get it. But it's
right,
totally valid and okay to say, you know what? We're not. So you're gonna
right,
have to go in tomorrow and say, I'm sorry, I forgot last minute. My parents weren't able to take me and do this, or I forgot I didn't tell my parents ahead of time and I wasn't able to do this because you didn't. And
right,
again, teaching kids to own up to, I shouldn't expect that my parents available for me 24/7 to do whatever I need them to do.
right,
Um, it's not cool to wait till 9 or 10 o'clock at night and say you need all this stuff for a project. No,
right,
it's not
right,
and so to set a boundary of if you needed this, you needed to let me know by this date. So going forward. But I think a lot of times we bend over backwards. And again, that's teaching the child, I can wait till the last minute, my parents will still do it.
right,
And is that the message you want?
right,
Is that what
right,
you want conveyed? And it's so
right.
hard, right? It is so hard to set that boundary, but it
Yeah.
can be a powerful message, and letting them deal with the consequence, not,
Yeah.
then rushing in and calling the teacher and saying, "Oh, he doesn't have it, but it's my fault." It's not.
No. Correct.
So let them, let them take responsibility. Let them say, "Yeah, I couldn't do it, and this is why."
Right. And then it feels a little crappy, and you
It
learn that it
does.
feels crappy,
It does.
and you try to figure out how to make it not feel crappy the next time.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. We have to do some things that feel really uncomfortable as parents because we don't like it when our kids feel disappointed or upset or stressed out, but it's not always productive to do things on their timeline.
Yeah.
Do you really want to be running around like that all the time? Just responding to every reaction that they have? No.
Yeah. So I want to go back to talking about kids and their pace of development. We might have
Mhm.
mentioned it a little earlier, but I think this is important. So, how do you normalize a student's unique pace of development while also still encouraging their growth?
Sure. So I think there's development and the idea too that especially kids with learning differences and such, that there are different expectations. And
Right.
so, when you have kids who have ADHD or have other learning differences and stuff, they may need to be explicitly taught things that other kids just pick up as they go along. So it is understanding, yeah, I might have to be more involved to do this, or knowing when to honestly delegate. I'm
Mm,
a big proponent if you can do this, and a lot of times schools have free opportunities for this too, is if your kid needs extra help, get a tutor. Get
right.
somebody else because it is so loaded. When you are the tutor for your child, there's so much emotional drama in there and expectations and angst, and your child is anxious and you're anxious, and just the dynamic. Be a parent, don't be their teacher. You know what I mean?
Right.
Either, and I should say that, I mean, we teach our kids every day, but I'm saying don't
Of
be
course.
your child's academic teacher. Let
Right.
teachers do that, or if there's a tutor or peer, can they get that from somebody else? Because it can create so much drama and so much stress. And just let yourself be a parent,
Right.
and be able to let go of that. And that's when you feel like, you have this good kid, but you guys are doing battle over homework every night, it's like the cost. The cost
Yeah.
is your relationship, your mental health, your kids' mental health. And so it
Right.
is, at what point do you just say enough and either
Yeah.
get them support elsewhere or again, have them go back and advocate for themselves? I spent 2 hours on this and this is how far I got.
Right.
Because I do feel like homework load expectations and productivity expectations are so skewed and warped, and we're making kids sick. And so, and the parent, again, sometimes parents resort for doing it for their kids or letting their kids stay home to complete stuff, and it's just it's kind of warped. And so
Yeah.
it's us setting limits, us saying you have been up, like it is 1 o'clock in the morning, you need to go to bed. And they're like,
Right.
I have this project. No, it's time to
Right.
go to bed,
Yeah.
and so it is setting that limit, setting that boundary with the kids, and understanding that if you need help, this is probably a better person to help you with this, and so that
Right.
we can maintain our relationship. Um,
Yeah.
because when you take a step back and think how effective my kid was in homework sophomore year of high school in the scheme of life,
Mm-hmm.
so little, but in the
Hmm.
moment feels really big.
Right. Yeah.
And it's I go back to, if as parents, if we can accept our kid exactly as who they are in this moment, that's everything.
Yeah.
So I might have a kid who really stinks at getting their homework done. Okay. And you can brainstorm, what could I do to be helpful, or to what extent, you know, they need to have a certain level of personal responsibility. And if it's not important to them and they don't want to do it, what's going to be the consequence? And
Right.
letting it happen.
Yeah.
What is the worst that is gonna happen?
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think that's important too for kids who decide to go to college because once you get to that level, you have to recognize, like, oh crap, like I'm not doing so hot on this assignment or in this specific class. Like I need to find my resource, right? I need to find the person that can help me with this or go talk to my professor and say, like, what do I do with X, Y, or Z? Like I'm having a hard time. How would I, maybe break up this material a little more easily for me to figure it out.
Right.
And at that point, like, are you calling your parents in the middle of their workday to be like, I don't know what's happening here?
Right, and again, for kids who have a learning difference, or kids who might need some accommodations and supports, that's very appropriate. But then at what point are we weaning them off those supports? And at what point are they either doing for themselves or knowing what, actively asking for what they need? Because
Right.
you're absolutely right. At college, nothing's going to be provided for you unless you
Right.
actively seek it out. So you're going to
Correct.
have to go, depending on the college, you're going to have to go to the student services office and say, "Hey, I'd like to take my test in a quieter space," or I'd love to have somebody edit my work. And then that
Right.
requires them to actually write the paper a week ahead of time and turn
Yep.
it into the editor in order to get it done. So it actually requires a lot of executive functioning skills to get the service
Yeah.
in college. And there's so
Yeah.
many things now. I mean, there are so many levels of support now, executive functioning skill coaches and what, but the biggest leap is that from having somebody right next to you to then applying that independently yourself. That is the
Absolutely.
biggest, and to get kids to try to do it. And because sometimes kids develop learned helplessness and they really, it feels like they prefer to have others do for them versus letting them struggle with, nope, at this point you need to do for yourself,
Right.
because it's essential.
Yeah. 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 So, what are the specific skills that parents should focus on developing to help their child launch into that independence?
Self-advocacy, number one.
Yeah.
Is definitely, and self-awareness, that's the other thing of, and going on a brief tangent, I am
Yeah.
a big proponent of accurate diagnosis. And I know
Yeah.
that a lot of parents worry about their kid being labeled and being treated differently because they have a label. I think
Right.
that we've done a lot of work destigmatizing different learning
Yes.
differences, and again, having kids advocate for themselves of, like, this is what it means. My brain works differently and this is how it works, and this is what I do really well, this is what's hard for me. But
Yeah.
a diagnosis helps kids understand their unique learning profile, their unique self, again, how their brain works, how they approach tasks, and it puts things in context.
Yeah.
And so I really do advocate for accurate diagnosis for kids so that they can understand, because kids a lot of times they know they're not oblivious. They know that this is hard for them, or they know they struggle with this. And so to
Yeah.
give it a reason and give them a strategy for working on it is huge.
Right.
It's empowering to them.
Yeah.
And so to not be afraid of that, and then not
Yeah.
be afraid to for your child and yourself to educate, your community if you need to. Educate your
Yeah.
teachers. Yeah, this means that this and your child to say this means like I might need startup help, or I might need assistive technology to help me with this, but then I can do this, or then I can do that, or yeah, I might be need help. Yeah, sometimes I don't pick up on social cues, or
Right.
I'm in a really loud room, it's overwhelming to me. Um,
Yeah.
and I really would want to be in a quieter space, or because I've seen kids do it so beautifully, where they're like, "Yep, that's not a recipe for success for me. So I'm not
Right.
going to do that, and I'm going to do this instead."
Yeah.
But they know that and can see that, and that's what you have to do in navigating in life. You have to see, what situation's going to work for me, what's not,
Yeah.
or what might be a challenge, but I can still do it.
Right. Yeah. It's so great because knowing your own boundaries is something that I just think doesn't happen. It doesn't always happen supernaturally for people because I feel like we socially have like the same expectation for everyone, just which just does not make any sense. And so it's so important to, like you said, have that self-awareness so that then you can have the self-advocacy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a balance, there's a balance between whether you're at school or whether you have a job. I also say one of the best things you can do for your kid is make them get a job in high school.
Yeah.
Volunteering or job, but because job teaches your kids so much,
Right.
because it's a person who they're not emotionally attached to, that's telling
Right.
them they need to do stuff. You need to show up. You need to do what you say you're going to do. You're going to have to do more or less preferred tasks. You might have
Mhm.
to learn specifically how to do it the way they want you to do. And so
Right.
it teaches so much in basically following directions and
Yeah.
being reliable and
Right.
just some really good life skills. So I encourage every parent to try to get their kid a job in high school, or not get a kid, that the kid gets the job for themselves,
Right.
ideally.
Yeah.
And that'll teach you so much. But it is it is a balancing act between advocacy and sometimes you got to do stuff you don't like to do. That's
Yeah.
a learning thing. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that might not be your preferred topic, or that might not be your preferred task, but sometimes we still have to do it. So
Yeah.
that's an important lesson. And then it's like, where's your line in the sand? What's a boundary? Like
Yeah.
it feels unsafe, or
Right.
it feels like they're asking you to do something that goes against your personal values. Then being able to
Right.
speak up and say, I'm not comfortable with this. So
Right.
it's also teaching that line for them. What is that line for them? What is, I
Right.
know if I go into this, really crowded, really loud space, I'm not going to be able to stay regulated. So I'm going to
Right.
get out of that,
Right.
or it's just, I have a hard time following a conversation when all these different people are talking. I would do better in a one-on-one,
Right.
just so each individual knowing that. And there's another kind of tangent, but, and maybe a generalization, but a lot of us my age have been socialized to be pleasing and accommodating,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
and to make things easier for other people, and to say yes and I'm sorry and of course I can help you with that. And so
Right.
teaching our girls, when it's okay to make other people uncomfortable and to set a
Yeah.
boundary or a limit and not just do what's pleasing and accommodating.
Absolutely.
That's a great skill.
Yes, it is.
One that I still have to work on sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because at a certain point, like, saying yes to everything or, making other people feel nice while you are uncomfortable, it just absolutely burns you out. And then you can't at a certain point, you're going to explode. You're gonna say no to everyone, and people are gonna say, "What the heck happened to you?"
Right.
So, having the balance is far more preferred.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, so are there strategies that you recommend for transitioning from small independent tasks to larger, more complex responsibilities?
Mm. I think, again, a lot of it is self-awareness and like, what do I need? So
Mm,
I'm a big
mhm.
list person. So
Yeah,
I take a lot of lists, and also writing down things is how it gets into my long-term memory. And
right.
so I often still take notes and stuff, and I might not even look back on the notes. I might have what I need documented elsewhere. But I know that for me, writing helps me with my memory, and creating lists helps me also. So
Right.
I think it's figuring out what I need then to do that jump. So, okay, I
Yeah.
can do one or two step directions, but if it's a multi-step direction, I need it written down or I need a visual.
Right.
That's what I need to make sure I know what to do. And so it is that, like, it always makes me nervous when I'm talking to a kid and we're going through stuff and they're not taking notes on anything. And I'm thinking, how are you going to retain this information?
Right.
Like what's your, oh, I'll remember it. It's like, will you?
Yeah. I know.
Or even, I mean, I've had young adults or employees of, like, we're talking, I'm thinking, what mechanism are you using
Right.
so that you're going to remember what we
Right.
talked about? So it is
Yeah.
having a strategy for that. And
Yeah.
a lot of times now, people on their laptops and stuff, but it's how am I going to retain the information I need to retain? So am I taking notes? Am I typing something on my computer? Am I recording it? But that
Right.
idea of how am I managing my time? What kind of, everybody needs an organizational system. Are you using
Yes.
Google Calendar? Are you using Trello? But
Right.
understanding what kind of organizational system you need to use to do the things you need to do.
Right.
So everyone needs it, and kids will resist that. They'll resist
Oh yeah.
planners or they'll resist it. So there is a lot of getting them to use it and getting them. It's a muscle that you need to
Yeah.
strengthen. Of what is it that works for me, and trying different things. But no strategy is not a strategy.
Right.
So you do have to push the issue of, I mean, and I've said to my young adult of, what strategy are you using to remember?
Yeah.
Because you need to have one. So pick
Right.
one and do it, because
Yes.
relying on mom to do it is not not the right
Right.
strategy.
Correct.
So yes.
Love it. Well, this is my last question for you, but I think it's a great one. If you could give one piece of advice to parents who want to raise resilient, independent learners, what would it be? Loaded question.
It is that ability, again, to see your child with clear eyes, to love them who they are in this moment, and to really think about whatever it is that you're pushing for. Is that for my kid or is it for me?
Mm,
I think, because again, a lot of times we're doing things because we feel uncomfortable.
right.
Doing things because we think, or keeping up with the Joneses, and so
Oh yeah.
you really have to think about, is this what's best for my kid, or am I doing it because I feel uncomfortable?
Right.
Um, and so it is that, some kids don't do well in school
Right.
and still grow up to be fully functional, successful, lovely human beings. So for
Right.
some of us, it's helping our kids survive school and letting
Yeah.
go of some stuff, letting go of, like, okay, so what if they don't do all their homework? Or so what if
Right.
they don't get straight A's? My kid's mental health is more important than that. But
Yes.
there are lots of different ways to go to college. There's lots of different ways to become an adult, and all of them
Right.
don't revolve around going to immediately into a four-year college. So
Right.
letting go, I think, of some of the expectations that we have and the path that we see for our kids, and
Yeah.
letting them forge their own path
Yeah.
with our support.
Right.
And I feel like increasingly we're giving people permission, for kids to take a gap year or to take some community college classes or go directly into the workforce or do things a
Right.
little differently, because one size doesn't fit all. And it's,
Right.
especially in this area, it's so intensely competitive. And it
Yes.
and when we push our kids to jump through all these hoops, at some point they pause and go, to what end? Like,
Yes.
why did I do all this?
Right.
Instead of helping them find their passion, helping them figure out what's important to them, and then letting them lead.
Right.
Um, and that's a powerful message, right? That you're listening to your child, that you're hearing what they like to do, what's important to
Right.
them, what their interests are, versus, like, no matter what, you need to go this way.
Correct. Right.
So yeah, and it's hard.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially like you said in this area.
And letting go is hard.
Yeah.
Letting go and letting kids do for themselves is it's hard. And you're going to parent as long as you have kids, you're parenting. Even your
Right.
child is 20, your child is 25, you're still parenting.
Right.
And so it's learning how to adjust to those different phases and how to adjust how you interact with your kids. It does go from when you're young, it's going to, you are structuring and making decisions and crafting a safe space for your kid to grow. And then as
Right.
they get older, you keep needing to kind of adjust it and giving them more freedom, giving them more independence, pulling back from stuff. And then by the time your kid's in college, you're a partner with them. You're supporting
Yeah.
them, you're listening to them, but ultimately they're making the decisions, they're doing the
Yeah.
stuff, and you're just a safe place for them to vent to, talk to, confide in, but letting them take off.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you being here. And I think there are so many great like nuggets in here for people to take and run with and just really help their kids become independent. So thank you for being here.
I appreciate it, and it's
Yeah.
fun to talk about it both as an educator and head of school and as a parent.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I made thousands of mistakes. But I am so grateful that, my kids and I are connected as adults. So that's the other piece.
Yeah.
That doing what you can to preserve that relationship is so important. And
Yeah.
like I say, I'm grateful to be able to be a head of school to some wonderful kids, and I'm grateful to be a parent to some wonderful kids. So
Oh.
it's seeing if you can enjoy the ride.
Exactly. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to the audience for listening. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a little rating and review. It helps other folks find the podcast, and we'll chat with you next time.